Welcome back to the discussion with Carole Switzer and Dittmar, who are the OCEG co-founder and the OCEG fellow respectively. This time, we will discuss about the compliance aspect as a part of the top 25 questions leadership must ask about GRC for artificial intelligence, which actually co-authored by two of you, Carole and Lee, and thank you for your kind presence in this discussion.
Hi, Anton. Hi, Carole. Good to be with you again.
Hi again, Anton and Lee. Nice to be with you. I hope everybody's enjoying this short series that we've been running on GRC for AI. And I'm looking forward to talking next about the compliance issues.
Carole and Lee, in the paper that you co-write, i.e. the top 25 questions leadership must ask about GRC for artificial intelligence, you suggest that there are 3 questions need to be addressed by leadership which are related to the compliance. May I go with the first questions to Carole? I invite your view, Carole, and all elaboration to the questions as follows. How are we incorporating in compliance consideration into our AI developments and deployments processes? And what controls do we have in place to ensure that compliance risks are analyzed and addressed at each stage of the process? Please, Carole.
Okay, so when we talk about addressing compliance risk, we really want to look for an answer to this question that addresses, I'll say, 4 stages of the process. A design phase, when you're creating the approach that you're going to be using towards the use of AI and its deployment. The controls you're going to put in place, training and communications would be the 3rd phase. And then, of course, continuous improvement. So let me just talk about each of those for a few minutes. In the design phase, you really, first of all, have to do a search, and you might even be using your AI to help you in this process to understand what are the requirements. Are there laws, rules, regulations? These are going to be evolving over time. Are there industry standards? Has the organization itself put any policies in place already? All of these, what I'll call mandatory boundaries, laws, rules, and regulations, and the more voluntary boundaries of industry groups and internal policies. All of these have to be identified and assessed. And in that context, there should be a particular emphasis on issues like transparency and interpretability in AI models. That's where we're going to start to see real compliance requirements in place. Then you get into the area of controls. You want to make sure that you establish your controls, that you have teams responsible for each, that you have methodologies for auditing the operation and effectiveness of those controls, and for determining where you might need to have some level of continuous control monitoring. That brings us then to the conversation about training and communication. So you definitely want your AI development teams to have ongoing training, to be kept up to speed on changes in requirements from a compliance perspective, and to have communication channels established with compliance experts in the organization who can help those developers and decision makers understand how to most effectively address compliance concerns. And then we get into continuous improvement. You've got to have in place some level of proactive assessment combined with some continuous monitoring and then evaluation, looking for patterns and trends, things that you might set up for triggers that would then require a new look, a refresh, and some improvements to be made. So overall, I think that's kind of the compliance cycle when you're talking about deploying and utilizing AI, and you want to make sure that you're addressing it at every stage.
Thanks, Carole, for the answer to the questions number 1. Now, let me turn around to the question number 2 to Lee, which actually the question as follows. What process you think do we have in place to stay up to date with any changes to the relevant rules, regulation, and industry standards regarding the use of artificial intelligence? May we invite you, Lee, to share some examples of prevailing certain laws, regulation, and industry standards and/or international standards regarding the use of artificial intelligence. Please, Lee.
Well, I'll do my best, Anton. Here's a quick snapshot. The European Union is clearly the most advanced with the EU AI Act. It's the first comprehensive AI regulation in the world. It's expected to be in full force sometime in 2024. The AI Act classifies AI systems into 4 different risk categories. Depending on the category of risk, is then subject to certain specific compliance requirements. First passed in April of 2021, the Act was modified earlier this year in 2023 to deal with generative AI and the increasing use of large language models. Now, in the United States, there is not yet a comprehensive federal regulation with regard to AI. There's some sector-specific laws already impacting AI use. And there have been some important executive orders, including one that calls for the development of a whole-of-government approach to AI governance. There are also some state-level laws that apply. China is taking a very proactive approach and is well advanced with regard to AI governance and regulation, especially with strict rules designed to ensure that AI is used in a manner that is consistent with the government's values and interests. In Southeast Asia, AI regulation is nascent, with most countries still focusing on digital economy development, and these rules have an indirect effect on AI. In Singapore, there has been a sort of a comprehensive set of governance and ethics rules, outline principles related to the fair, ethical, transparent, and human-centered use of AI. Now, to industry and international standards. First, we have the IEEE's Ethically Aligned Design Framework, which provides guidelines, and I'm going to read this. We're prioritizing human well-being in the age of autonomous and intelligent systems. Wow. Now we also have the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technologies, that's the NIST, and they have the AI Risk Management Framework, which provides guidelines for identifying and mitigating AI risks. Now, up at the global level, we've got the Partnership on AI. It's a group of 10 large technology companies, plus an equal number of academic and civil society organizations that develop the responsible AI principles. And then from the United Nations, we have the AI for Good global standards. This is being developed by the ITU, which is a specialized agency in the UN, which is focused on information and communication technologies. Well, there's no doubt, Anton, that regulatory risk abounds. It's going to be a lot of change going forward. So organizations must comply with what's in effect now. Be on the lookout for what is emerging at the global, regional, and local level.
Thanks, Lee, for the answer to the questions number 2. Now, allow me to pose question number 3 to both to you, Lee, and Carole. And the question is as follows. What policies and procedures have been put into place to ensure that artificial intelligence is being used in a responsible, ethical, risk-informed, and compliant manner? Carole and Lee, would you please give an illustration of how this already being practiced or supposed to be practiced? If possible, one illustration of practical example by corporation from Carole, and from Lee, please give another illustration of practical example by a public entity and or government body. Please, Carole and Lee, to share your thought and answer.
I think over time we're going to start to see some standardization around policies regarding the use of AI. But right now, I think I would point to a few high-level categories of policies. The first being an ethical AI policy. This is something that might address issues such as bias, which we've talked about a little bit earlier, fairness, transparency, and also explainability. Being able to go back and demonstrate and explain how your AI models are coming to the conclusions that they are. Each of those areas might actually have their own policies in addition to or instead of an overarching ethical AI policy. And another area I would say is that around security, having policies to help protect your AI systems from cybersecurity threats, and at the same time protecting data, so a privacy policy that makes sure that you are, not exposing personally identifiable information or other private content through the use of AI.
Thanks, Carole. And now, please, Lee, to give your point of view or observation and perhaps any direct or indirect experience about policies and procedure which have been or should have been in place to ensure that artificial intelligence is being used in responsible, ethical, risk-informed, and compliant manner, particularly by the public sector and non-government body. In this case, if possible, Lee, to give also such illustration of practices in developed countries' economic environment, VIP, and emerging market economic environment. Please.
Certainly, Anton. Well, as you and I both know, AI has the potential to transform public sector services and government operations. But with the power of this technology comes great responsibility, especially for public sector bodies, because they handle the most sensitive of data and have a general responsibility for the public welfare. Now, let's look at the state of the world in this regard. First of all, I would say that in the developed economies, that there's a trend toward, a movement toward a comprehensive approach to the rules, regulations, and framework for the public sector use of AI. Although in my country, in the US, it's still a bit fragmented. However, this is where I see things going. The most advanced economy in this regard is the EU. As we talked about earlier, the EU has the AI Act, which should be in effect by next year. And interestingly, this act has specific provisions about public sector use of AI. Most notably, a need for public interaction before any AI that is rated as high risk is deployed. Now, with regard to the emerging economies, here I think we're a little earlier on in terms of the development of what the laws, rules, policies, and regulations are and will be with regard to public sector use of AI. But as an example, I think, take it in your own country, there's been strides made in this regard. Indonesia has a national AI strategy and has taken a number of actions toward getting a comprehensive framework in place. There's an oversight committee that has already been established for AI. A set of principles for AI ethics has been developed, and a couple of works in process, the development of a data repository for AI researchers, and the development of education and training for government employees and for the general public. Now, as we look forward, what I would see happening or see the need to happen, in whether you're in a developed or a developed nation or an emerging economy market, I think what you have to have is a robust set of principles that you need to, on an ongoing basis, conduct risk assessments of your AI and its uses. And you need to have ongoing, continual interaction with your stakeholders and your constituents. And I would say this, that as we go forward and as AI continues to evolve and be deployed in the public sector, that we'll see more rules and more policies and more standards come into play to govern how AI is used.
We thank you so much to you both, Carole and Lee. Your elaboration examples are very, very useful to the audience. And I do hope to the audience that all what Carole and Lee share during this discussion are very beneficial and helpful to all of us.
Thanks again, Anton. Fun as always. Looking forward to our next conversation.
Thank you, Anton. Good to be with you, Carole. And thanks to our audience for being with us. I look forward to continuing our conversation about the most important questions that have to be asked and answered with regard to GRC or AI.
And again, to all of us, see you again in the next discussion about training and education aspect in the context of what leadership must ask about GRC for artificial intelligence. Thanks, Carole, again. Thanks, Lee, again. And thanks to the audience again. See you.